I always thought I had a good marriage. My wife, Jessica, and I had been together for over 8 years. We built a comfortable life in a small suburban town where both of us felt secure in our jobs and our relationship. Jessica was a passionate reproductive rights activist, and I admired her commitment to the cause. I often joked about how she could talk anyone's ear off about bodily autonomy. It was one of the things that drew me to her in the first place, her fiery spirit and unwavering belief in women's rights. However, as time went on, I began to notice subtle changes in her behavior. At first, it was small things. She was distant and often on her phone, texting or scrolling through social media at odd hours. I thought nothing of it initially, chalking it up to her being busy with work. She was always in and out, attending rallies, meetings, and late-night discussions at the local community center. I admired her dedication, but I soon started feeling that her passion was pulling her away from me. I tried to engage with her, but often found myself met with short answers and an absence of connection. The tipping point for me came one evening when I noticed a sudden change in her schedule. Jessica had come home late after a meeting, her clothes slightly disheveled and her makeup smudged, a stark contrast to her usual polished appearance. I brushed it off, thinking she had a long day, but my gut told me something was off. My suspicions grew, and I found myself replaying the last few months in my mind, trying to piece together the puzzle of her behavior. One fateful afternoon, I stumbled upon her laptop left open on the kitchen table. I was about to close it when I saw a series of messages pop up. They were from a colleague of hers, Mark, who was also a reproductive rights activist. As I read through the messages, my heart sank. They were flirty, filled with inside jokes and heart emojis, and before I knew it, I was in the deep end of a gut-wrenching realization. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. These weren't just friendly exchanges. They were intimate, filled with innuendos that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I slammed the laptop shut and felt the walls closing in. How long had this been going on? Had I been oblivious? It took everything in me to keep my composure as I waited for Jessica to come home. When she walked through the door, I could barely look at her. My mind raced with anger and betrayal. Finally, I confronted her. The moment I said, "We need to talk," I could see the blood drain from her face. I laid out everything, the messages, my suspicions, and how I felt like a fool for trusting her blindly. Her initial reaction was shock, but it quickly morphed into something else, defensiveness. She feigned confusion, insisted that I was reading too much into things and that Mark was just a friend who understood her work. "No, Jess, this isn't just a friend," I snapped, my voice rising. "I know what I read. You can't deny it." The ensuing argument was a whirlwind of emotions. She denied everything outright, claimed I was paranoid, and tried to turn things around, making me feel guilty for questioning her loyalty. Each lie she spun felt like a dagger in my heart. I was no longer speaking to my wife but to a stranger who was desperate to cover her tracks. I felt like I was unraveling, caught in a storm of betrayal and heartbreak. As I paced the living room, I struggled with the emotional impact of this confrontation. The man I loved, the partner I had built my life with, was lying to me. I felt betrayed, angry, and confused. The person I thought I knew was slipping away, and it left me grappling with a mix of sadness and rage. My mind raced with questions. How could she do this? Was it something I did? Was our marriage just a facade? It was hard to accept that the woman I had loved and supported through thick and thin was now someone I could barely recognize. After what felt like an eternity of back-and-forth accusations and denials, I knew I had to make a choice. My heart was heavy with the weight of betrayal, but deep down, I knew that I needed to decide how to move forward, whether it meant fighting for my marriage or learning to let go. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of Jessica and Mark. I replayed the confrontation over and over, dissecting every word she said. The lies she spun felt like a noose tightening around my chest. I kept telling myself that she wouldn't have the audacity to cheat on me, but deep down, the evidence was right there, staring me in the face. The next day, I faced a choice. I could either confront Jessica again or take time to gather my thoughts. I opted for the latter. I needed clarity, so I spent the day at work like a zombie, unable to focus on anything. My colleagues noticed my distracted demeanor, but I brushed off their concerns with vague excuses about personal matters. I felt like I was living a double life, pretending everything was normal while grappling with a heartbreak that felt insurmountable. When I finally got home, Jessica was waiting for me, her eyes filled with concern. She tried to reach out, asking what was wrong, but I felt too raw to engage. Instead, I kept my distance, needing to process my feelings in solitude. I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood to clear my head, hoping the fresh air would help. As I walked, I couldn't help but think of all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the love, and the dreams we had built together. As the days turned into a week, I found myself spiraling deeper into confusion and hurt. I began to analyze our relationship through a different lens. I started to recall moments that had seemed insignificant at the time: a late-night phone call she had taken outside, her sudden need for privacy, and the way her phone would buzz with notifications she was quick to dismiss. Then one fateful evening I decided to take control. I needed answers, no more excuses or lies. I gathered evidence from her social media accounts where I found pictures of her and market events I thought she attended alone. They looked happy together. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. When I confronted her again, I was more composed, ready to lay everything out on the table. "Jessica, I've seen the photos. You can't deny this. You're cheating on me with Mark," I demanded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Her reaction was different this time. The confident facade she wore crumbled slightly, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "I told you those are just work events. He's a colleague," she protested weakly, but I could sense her losing ground. "No more lies," I yelled, my voice echoing in the small living room. "This isn't just work anymore. I need the truth, Jessica. I deserve that much." Her defenses began to break. I could see the gears turning in her mind as she struggled to find a way out. "Okay, maybe I got a bit too close to him," she admitted reluctantly, avoiding my gaze. "But it didn't mean anything. I love you." The words stung. "If you love me, how could you do this? You've betrayed my trust." She began to cry, and part of me felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the messages, the pictures, and the lies. I couldn't allow myself to be fooled again. "You need to make a choice, Jess. You can't keep playing both sides." In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about her affair. It was about the lack of respect she had for me and our marriage. I could see it in her eyes that she knew she had crossed a line, but whether she truly understood the implications was still up in the air. The emotional impact of the confrontation left me feeling exhausted. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw things, but I didn't. Instead, I threw myself into a calm demeanor, trying to maintain some semblance of control in the chaos of my life. I felt like a stranger in my own home, surrounded by echoes of what used to be a loving relationship. The realization hit me hard. I had a decision to make. Could I forgive her? Could I trust her again? Or was it time to cut my losses and walk away? My heart was heavy with the weight of betrayal, yet I couldn't ignore the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, our marriage could be salvaged. As the days passed, the confrontation lingered in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I had no answer, only an aching uncertainty about what the future held. I spent hours contemplating my next steps, wondering if love was worth the fight or if it was time to let go altogether. Each moment felt like a crossroads, and I knew I had to decide how to move forward, either towards reconciliation or the bitter path of separation. As the days turned into weeks, the tension in our home became unbearable. The air was thick with unspoken words and pent-up emotions. I spent hours in my own little world, vacillating between anger, sadness, and confusion. I began to dread the moments when I would see Jessica, yet I couldn't completely shut her out. We were still living together, and even though I'd been hurt, there were times when I longed for the connection we once had. One evening, while I was aimlessly scrolling through social media, I saw a post from Jessica celebrating an upcoming rally. It was one of those events she had been so passionate about, but it felt hollow to me now. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was living her life, fully immersed in her work, while I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. I decided to take a leap. If I was going to try to salvage our relationship, I needed to communicate. We had been skirting around the issues for too long. I invited her to sit down with me that night, heart pounding as I wondered how this conversation would unfold. "Jessica, we need to talk," I started, my voice steady, but my insides felt like they were twisting into knots. "I want to understand what's been going on in your mind. What do you want from this relationship?" Her reaction surprised me. Instead of the defensive walls she had built up during our previous confrontations, she looked vulnerable. "I've messed up, I know that, but I don't want to lose you," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Then why did you let it get this far? Why cheat on me?" I pressed, feeling the anger bubble up again. "I don't know. I got caught up in things, in the excitement of being around someone who understood my passion," she replied, her voice shaky. "But it was wrong, and I regret it every day." Her words stirred something in me, but I was still wrestling with my emotions. "I need more than just regret, Jess. I need to know that you're committed to us. I can't keep feeling like the other option." "I'm committed. I was lost for a while. Mark made me feel alive, but I understand." Now that I was just trying to escape from the pressures of everything, she admitted, her shoulders sagging. "It was stupid. You mean everything to me." "Then why did you let it go so far?" I asked, frustration spilling out. "Do you think I can just forget about this and move on?" "I don't expect you to forget. I just want the chance to make it right," she pleaded, leaning forward. "I want to work on us. I'll do whatever it takes." Her earnestness struck a chord, but the wounds from her betrayal were still fresh and raw. I felt torn, wanting to believe her but struggling with the reality of the situation. "I need time, Jess. I can't just decide overnight to forgive you," I said, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. We spent the next few weeks navigating this fragile state of being. Jessica was determined to show me she was committed to repairing our relationship. She made an effort to connect with me emotionally, going out of her way to make things feel normal again. But every time I looked at her, I saw the shadow of betrayal lurking behind her eyes. As time went on, I noticed little improvements. We started communicating more openly, sharing our feelings instead of bottling them up. I appreciated her attempts, but with every small moment of warmth, I also felt the looming shadow of what had happened. I was cautiously optimistic. Could we really fix this? Then came the pivotal moment that would force me to confront the reality of our situation. One evening, Jessica came home looking particularly flustered. She had just returned from a meeting with Mark, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. "Jess, what's wrong?" I asked, sensing the tension in her shoulders. I don't know how to say this," she hesitated, her voice wavering. "Mark wants to talk about our project, but it feels so much more complicated now. He's still trying to flirt with me, and I don't know how to handle it." A wave of rage surged through me. "Why are you even still in contact with him? You need to cut ties. This isn't just a project anymore, it's your loyalty at stake." "I know, I'm trying," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "But I can't just abandon the work. I want to fight for women's rights. I need to do this, but I don't want him, I want you." Her desperation was palpable, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized that she was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Her passion for activism was intermingling with her emotional missteps. Still, I felt like I was fighting a losing battle. "Jess, you need to make a choice. If you really want us, you have to cut him out completely," I said firmly, my voice steady even as my heart raced. "I will, I swear. I'll tell him I can't work with him anymore," she promised, her eyes wide with sincerity. In that moment I saw a flicker of hope, but I also knew that it wouldn't be easy. I had to be vigilant, not just about her actions, but about my feelings. Could I really trust her? The road ahead was uncertain, but deep down, I felt that our relationship deserved a fighting chance. As I contemplated our conversation, I realized that love wasn't always a straightforward path. Sometimes it was messy and complicated, filled with bumps along the way. The journey of rebuilding our trust was just beginning, and it would take time, effort, and an unwavering commitment from both of us. But for the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could navigate through the storm together. With Jessica's promise to cut ties with Mark, I felt a mix of relief and skepticism. I wanted to believe her, but my heart was still cautious. The next few days were a blur of emotions as we navigated our new reality. We tried to reconnect by going on small dates, revisiting places we used to enjoy, and having deeper conversations about our feelings and what had led us to this point. But the specter of her infidelity loomed large, and I found myself questioning every little thing she did. One afternoon, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed to make sure that Jessica was serious about cutting off her relationship with Mark. So I started doing some digging of my own. I checked her social media, her texts, and even her email. It felt invasive, but I was desperate for reassurance. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know if she was truly committed to my side or if she was still caught up in the web of deceit. After hours of searching, I found what I was looking for: a text message thread where Jessica had been communicating with Mark. Although the messages were not as flirtatious as before, they still had an undertone of familiarity that made my skin crawl. They discussed project timelines and shared jokes that felt too personal for a professional relationship. My heart sank and the anger bubbled to the surface again. That evening I confronted her once more. "Jessica, I need to ask you something. Are you really done with Mark?" I started, my voice low and heavy with emotion. "What do you mean?" she replied, looking genuinely confused. "I found messages between you two. Not just about work, but you're still talking to him in ways that aren't professional. This is exactly what we're trying to avoid," I exclaimed, feeling the frustration rise within me. "I swear it's nothing. I'm just trying to keep things cordial for the sake of our work," she said defensively, but I could see the panic in her eyes. I shook my head, feeling the betrayal wash over me again. "You promised," you cut him off completely. "This doesn't feel like moving on to me. It feels like you're still holding onto something." "I'm not. I'm trying to do the right thing, but it's hard. I didn't realize it would be this complicated," she protested. I felt the walls close in around us. "This isn't just about work. You're still involved with him emotionally. How am I supposed to trust you when you can't let go?" In that moment, I recognized the weight of the choice I had to make. I had been trying to salvage something that felt beyond repair. I needed to take a step back and consider what was best for me. As much as I loved Jessica, I couldn't ignore the truth that was staring me in the face. The trust was shattered, and it wasn't something that could be easily fixed. The days that followed were agonizing. I went through a cycle of anger, sadness, and confusion. I wanted to support her, but each time I interacted with her, I felt like I was betraying myself. I had to come to terms with the reality that Jessica may not be the person I thought she was. Finally, I took a hard look in the mirror one night. I realized I had been trying to save a relationship that was already crumbling. I needed to put my own emotional health first. I was tired of going through this cycle of hope and disappointment. So, I made a decision. I would tell Jessica that I needed space to think and figure out what I truly wanted. The next day I sat her down once more, heart pounding as I wrestled with my own emotions. "Jess, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's wrong?" she asked, worry etched on her face. "I need some time apart. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not," I said, feeling the weight of my words. "I need to figure out if this is something I want to continue fighting for." Her expression fell. "You can't be serious. I'm trying to make this work." "I know you are, but I need to prioritize my own well-being. I can't go on like this, feeling insecure and uncertain." "But we can get through this together. I love you," she pleaded, tears in her eyes. "I love you too, but love isn't enough when trust has been broken. I need to be alone to figure out what I want," I stated firmly, feeling a sense of determination wash over me despite the pain. Jessica's face crumbled as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Please don't do this. I'll fix everything, I promise. Just give me more time." "It's not just about time, Jess. It's about trust. I need to see if I can find that again. Right now, I don't think I can," I replied, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. I moved into the guest room that night, a physical manifestation of the emotional distance that had grown between us. The separation felt surreal. I was both heartbroken and relieved. I spent that first night alone in silence, grappling with my decision. As the days turned into weeks, I found some clarity. I started focusing on myself, going to the gym, spending time with friends, and even diving into hobbies I had neglected. I began to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage, a journey that was both liberating and painful. But as much as I was trying to heal, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. Jessica would occasionally reach out, checking in on me, expressing her desire to reconcile. But I remained steadfast in my decision, knowing that I needed to be sure before making any commitments again. Each passing day brought new challenges, but it also allowed me to reflect on what I had learned about love, trust, and the importance of self-worth. I knew that I had to be honest with myself. Regardless of what the future held, I had to find a way to heal and reclaim my life, whether that meant rebuilding with Jessica or moving on entirely. As I settled into my new routine, the initial shock of the separation began to ebb. I found solace in the quiet moments and the chance to rediscover myself. I spent weekends hiking, joining a local book club, and catching up with old friends. Each activity helped to stitch together the frayed edges of my identity that had been lost amid the chaos of my marriage. Jessica called sporadically, and while her voice was often filled with a mixture of hope and sadness, I remained firm in my resolve to take the time I needed. I could tell she was trying, but my heart was still too bruised to leap back into our life together. I needed to find the strength to stand on my own before even considering the possibility of reconciliation. One evening, I received a text from Jessica that made my heart race. She wanted to meet. Part of me was excited. I had missed her, but the other part felt trepidation. What could she possibly say that would change the current course of our lives? I took a deep breath and agreed, setting up a time at a cafe we used to frequent. When I arrived, I felt a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. The cafe smelled of coffee and baked goods, and the atmosphere was filled with the chatter of couples and friends. But all I could focus on was the empty seat across from me, where Jessica would soon be sitting. When she walked in, my heart skipped a beat. She looked nervous, her eyes scanning the room until they locked onto mine. Approached and sat down, a hint of uncertainty in her posture. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey," I replied, trying to maintain a neutral expression despite the flood of emotions that rushed through me. "I just wanted to talk, really talk," she began, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we separated. I know I messed up and I'm sorry. I want to take responsibility for my actions." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. "I appreciate that, but apologies only go so far. I need to know you're committed to making real changes." "I am. I've cut ties with Mark completely. I realize now how toxic that situation was," she said, a spark of urgency in her voice. "I want us to work, but I need your help to understand how." Her sincerity was palpable, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. But then I reminded myself of the pain I'd endured, the nights spent feeling betrayed and lost. "Jessica, it's not just about cutting him off. It's about rebuilding trust. It's about understanding why you felt the need to seek comfort in someone else." She took a deep breath, tears welling in her eyes. "I know I hurt you, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I was trying to escape the pressure of everything, my work, our relationship. I thought I could find solace elsewhere, but I was wrong. I only realized how much I truly love you when you were gone." I looked into her eyes, searching for the truth within her words. "Do you really mean that? Can you promise me that you'll prioritize our relationship over your work? Because if we're going to rebuild, I can't be an afterthought." "I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to prove my love to you," she assured me, her voice earnest. "I want to go to couples therapy. I want us to work on our communication to understand each other better. I need to understand myself better too." The idea of couples therapy intrigued me. It felt like a tangible step toward healing, and for the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. "That could be a good start," I admitted cautiously. "But I need to see consistent effort. I can't go back to how things were." "I understand. I'm ready to do the work. I want to make this right," she replied, her sincerity shining through the veil of past mistakes. Our conversation continued, delving deeper into our relationship's issues and the real reasons behind the affair. We talked about our feelings, our fears, and the importance of emotional honesty. Slowly, we began to bridge the gap that had formed between us. However, I was still guarded. The scars of betrayal were not something I could easily forget. I found myself questioning whether I could truly trust her again. I wanted to believe in the possibility of a fresh start, but I wasn't ready to throw myself back into our old patterns without ensuring that both of us were genuinely committed to change. As the meeting drew to a close, I felt a bittersweet sense of closure. It was clear that Jessica was willing to fight for our relationship, but I also knew that I had to protect my heart. Let's start with therapy then, but I need to take this slowly. I can't rush into anything, I said, feeling a sense of resolve. Absolutely. I'll respect your pace, she agreed, her voice steady and reassuring. After we parted ways, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. The road ahead was still long, but I felt like we had taken a crucial step towards healing. I knew there would be challenges, but perhaps we could navigate them together. I had learned that love is a journey, and sometimes it requires a willingness to face the storm before finding the calm. In the days that followed, I focused on self-care while awaiting Jessica's next steps. I committed to attending therapy sessions, both individually and together, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose in my own healing journey. I realized that forgiveness and trust take time, and maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. I had learned the importance of setting boundaries and prioritizing my feelings, and for that, I felt stronger than ever. As the weeks passed, Jessica and I began attending couples therapy together. The sessions felt intense but necessary. We dove deep into our emotions, exploring the roots of our issues and the reasons behind her infidelity. At first, the conversations were challenging. I found it difficult to open up about my vulnerabilities, while Jessica struggled to articulate her feelings without feeling defensive. Our therapist, Dr. Roberts, guided us through the process with skillful patience. She encouraged us to express our feelings without placing blame, an approach that felt foreign but instrumental. I began to appreciate how our past communication patterns had contributed to the rift in our relationship. It was eye-opening to understand that our lack of emotional intimacy had provided an opening for Jessica to seek validation outside our marriage. One evening, as we sat in our living room after a therapy session, I looked at Jessica and felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. The therapy helps, but I still feel like there are walls between us, I said, trying to articulate the unease I still carried. I know, she replied, her voice soft as she fiddled with her hands. I'm scared too. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to rush things. I need you to know I'm committed to this, to us. Commitment is just the start, Jess. I need to see real changes, I said, feeling both the weight of my words and the hope they carried. We both knew that rebuilding trust wouldn't happen overnight, but each therapy session brought a little more clarity. Jessica started to share her fears, how she sometimes felt overwhelmed by her work and the passion that had originally drawn us together but had slowly become a source of tension. I began to understand that her infidelity was not about a lack of love for me, but rather a misguided attempt to cope with her feelings of inadequacy. At the same time, I opened up about my own insecurities and what led me to feel unworthy of her love. I realized that I had been holding onto past grievances and had stopped expressing my own needs. The more we communicated, the more I saw the possibility of healing. During one of our sessions, Dr. Roberts suggested we create a list of shared goals, things we both wanted for our relationship moving forward. It seemed simple, but it allowed us to envision a future together. We talked about wanting better communication, more quality time, and a renewed focus on intimacy, both emotional and physical. As we worked through our lists, I felt a shift in our dynamic. We were no longer just husband and wife, but partners in the truest sense, committed to supporting one another's growth. I began to see the glimmers of the love we had once shared, and it filled me with hope. Months passed, and while there were still moments of doubt and fear, I felt a transformation taking place within both of us. Jessica became more open about her work pressures, and I learned to be more supportive rather than retreating into my own insecurities. We began to plan weekend getaways to reconnect and break the monotony that had settled in after the affair. One day, as we lounged together on our balcony, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise, I turned to her. "You know, I think we're really doing it. We're rebuilding something beautiful," I said, a smile creeping onto my face. Jessica returned my smile, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "I feel it too. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm so sorry for the pain I caused. But I want you to know that I am working every day to be the partner you deserve," she replied, her voice steady with conviction. In that moment, I realized that while the scars of the past would always remain, they didn't have to define us. We were choosing to move forward, to embrace the journey of healing together. I could see that both of us were learning to prioritize our relationship again, to communicate openly, and to cherish the love we had fought so hard to reclaim. Eventually, I knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but I felt a sense of strength in our commitment to one another. I had learned the importance of setting boundaries, of prioritizing emotional health, and of recognizing the signs of when a relationship needed nurturing. As a couple, we had experienced the depths of betrayal, but we had also discovered the power of forgiveness and growth. Life would never be perfect, but I felt hopeful about the future. We were no longer just surviving, we were thriving together, learning to love one another in new and deeper ways. I had come to terms with the fact that life is a constant journey of growth, and it's the choices we make along the way that define us. Whether it was learning to forgive, to communicate openly, or to rediscover love, I felt grateful for the lessons learned through this painful experience. And as we sat together, hand in hand on that balcony, I knew that we had the potential to create the future we both desired, together.